Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome in another episode of Gorilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Jesse. She's Megan. We're down here at the Avs practice facility. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley here. We'll tell you that story here in just a little bit. Megan, day 2 of development camp. Group stayed about the same as they did yesterday. So again, nothing really... not a lot of real hockey going on out there in terms of 5-on-5. It is still a lot of drills, but I do know this is one of your favorite times of year. This is one of your favorite weeks. So, as always, I just want to start with, how are you doing on what you described yesterday? Megan walks in the meeting room and goes, "It's Prospect Christmas." How you doing?
It's like waking up under the tree and there's just a
Waking up under the tree. We just learned an interesting tidbit about Megan's Christmas traditions.
I said that so confidently and so wrong.
Megan sleeps under the tree on Christmas Eve.
I get so excited. It's like waking up to find new batch of prospects under the tree.
I don't know if that's any better, but yes. It is like finding...
Where do you put your gifts?
Well, it was that you said a new batch of prospects. Are they piled up under the tree? Are they wrapped really nicely?
They're wrapped really nicely, except for Linus Funk's skate blade.
Yeah.
That needed some tinkering, but they're wrapped really nicely, and I think things are a little different this year. Different meaning they have the power skating coaches on the ice today. That's a new layer to me, at least as a viewer. And I think that's an excellent addition to round out what these guys are going to get out of development camp. And I'm just continuing to have fun because I know there are a lot of people who aren't crazy about the state of the prospect pipeline for the Avs right now. And it's a fair concern, but there are still prospects to care about and lock into. And seeing some of the newly drafted guys on the ice and then some of these, like a Cooper Gay, a college free agent that turns that into an NHL contract. There's just a lot of intrigue around maybe what some of these players could be one day, and it's also a good evaluation of how far away some of these players might be from making an impact in the NHL, and that's the reality of this weekend, is there are guys that I still don't know if I see that upside, but I said that about Taylor McCarr going back a few dev camps ago, and so I'm excited to be wrong about these things. I love to see just how much you can really take away from them. And it doesn't mean I won't try.
Doesn't mean that Megan's not going to try to make sweeping generalizations based on... No. I think the Taylor McCarr... I think that's a good name to pull on a week like this. Because even, honestly, Megan, even if you're the San Jose Sharks, who are in the business of acquiring high-end young talent, these development camps, it's a lot of camp invites and guys who are further down your prospect pipeline, and you're trying to see, what do we have? What could be on the horizon? To that point with Taylor McCarr, who are some guys that maybe have some tools we can develop something out of? And the part that I do think gets left out of a lot of these conversations, which is where, Megan, we love, what you do, at Gorilla for the prospects and the Eagles. There are 2 other rosters that this organization has to fill out aside from the Colorado Avalanche. Teams that are looking to be competitive, the Colorado Eagles, teams that are looking to win championships, and that's something else to keep an eye on out here as well. It isn't just, who are the guys that could impact the Avs this year? It's probably a pretty limited number of guys that are out here, but who are guys that could be impact players for the Eagles this season? Who are guys that could maybe make their way onto a Utah Grizzlies roster and find their way into the Eagles lineup? Things like that. It's not just who is it the Avs have their eye on out here this week, but there's a lot of different layers to this. And so I think it is, I'm with you. I get why people aren't, maybe super high on some of the names that are out here, but you got to give the Avs credit. And I've been a vocal advocate for this over the last number of seasons that Cooper Gay, someone we talked to today, who had a great story, by the way, of finding out about a contract offer. But, those types of players, I think, are the ones that are fun to look at this week and say, okay, you're not pushing for a spot out of main camp, but, who are some guys to keep an eye on as they build and start to maybe become surprise additions to the pipeline, whether it be for assets or players that are, legitimate, exciting prospects. Let's start with session 1. So they kept these again. So let me also add this real quick. we're here at the practice facility. The Avs still haven't really done anything when it comes to free agency, so we are keeping our eye on that as well. If something happens while we're in the middle of this pod, we will pivot and talk about anything like that, Nikolai Ehlers or otherwise. But just so everyone knows, the free agent stuff is still going on, but what a weird free agent year this has been. We'll touch on that a little bit at the end. They kept the group split, forwards and defensemen separated out. I don't remember having seen them do it like this in the past. It makes it a little bit easier to keep an eye on who you're wanting to keep an eye on.
Yes.
In that first, and the drills are different too. Like, it's stuff that is specific for defensemen, stuff that's specific for forwards.
Yes.
In that forward group, Megan, was there anyone different maybe that we didn't talk about yesterday that popped, or is it the same guys again jumping off the ice to you? I know Cooper Gay was one who really separated for you yesterday.
Yeah, just kind of a continuation of what I saw from yesterday. Like, I didn't talk about Jake Fisher, but this was a player that I saw some good things yesterday and continued to see good things from today. I'll start with him off the top since I have maybe a little less to say comparatively, but what I like about Jake Fisher is also informed by what I knew of him at DU this last year. Mm-hmm. And so he got some bumper spot time on that second power play unit at DU, and that's obviously a competitive power play, one of the best in the NCAA, to even get a spot on. And it's because they are trying to emphasize his offensive game, because coming from juniors, that was actually a really great skill set of his, but I think he profiles as a player that has those blue-collar habits that could help in a depth role at a pro level one day. And so that's why I'd like to see him get some more PK time, round out his defensive game. But there is an offensive side to his game that I think, seeing this today, he's got a pretty powerful shot, and he's got an active stick in the middle. And so when they were doing this tip-in drill, he was one of the few players who was actually able to get pucks to the back of the net with a goaltender in it. I want to just make that clear.
Goaltenders do go away about halfway through the day on this. So important caveat.
Yeah, and so he was getting some stick taps too, and he had no reaction to it really, because comparatively to Christian Humphrey is a player I didn't talk about as much yesterday, but another who I think has a lot of really intriguing raw tools. He is a showboat, and he's a little bit cocky, but I say that in a parentheses affectionately, because when he put a puck past the goaltender in the early session, he was screaming on the ice. He was hyped up, and then just thought it was funny to see the contrast then in Jake Fisher in that tip and drill, getting some pucks past the goalie. Not really having a reaction, just a normal day. And then I liked, too, his play along the wall, just protecting the puck. He's very unfazed by the contact that he's getting from behind him, and because of the role that I see him filling one day, I think it's really good for him to be able to wear that contact along the wall, protect the puck with a lot of confidence and strength. And so just a couple of things about Jake Fisher that I liked. And then going back to Christian Humphreys, it's the puck skill that stands out from him now 2 days into this. He finds pucks in traffic really well. The handling skill is there, and I like the confidence that he plays with. It reminds me a little bit of how Kobe Ambrosio used to show at these dev camps too. There's just kind of an excitement in everything that he's doing, but there's a lot of skill there as well. And so he talked with us a little bit about how the opportunity moving from Michigan to Kitchener really opened up opportunity in role and ice time that I think benefited him a lot. I think he needed those reps and that constant usage to build up that confidence, because you can tell that's his instinct. He wants to score goals. He wants to be an offensive threat on the ice, and you just kind of see it shine through in this setting.
Well, let's pause on that really fast, because I found it to be fascinating conversation that you had with him in the locker room about the move.
I knew that you had, going back to the start ahead of the decision to move to Kitchener, can you walk me through weighing some of the pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I love Michigan when I was there. It's a great spot, and at the end of the day, it comes down to development, and I think for me, I wasn't developing as a player, so there was kind of a weekend where I regrouped with family, parents, agents, and we thought it was the best decision for me, and kind of taking a step back, getting more puck touches, playing with the puck more, and just building up my overall confidence. So after I kind of talked with Kitchener, it was a no-brainer for sure.
And now, a year after the decision, what did you feel about the opportunity that you were given?
Yeah, it was incredible. Whenever I got there, my plan was to go back to college, and even Colorado, they wanted me to stay another year. So, like I said, even from the coaching staff, the players there, I mean, it's a first-class organization. I mean, we play in front of 8,000 fans a night in juniors, so just the city, fans, staff. I mean, you can't really ask for much more. So I'm excited to go back there.
And where do you think you saw the biggest growth this last year?
Yeah, I just think in my overall game, I kind of just had more confidence with the puck and just taking steps like within my skating and even shooting the puck a little more. So, you know, they've kind of gave me a lot of leeway, especially in the O zone. They kind of tell me it's your O zone, but you know, in the D zone, I think I've made a big leap. I mean, I've been playing center and wingers and switching off, so it's been good to get both roles with them for sure.
And because of this decision, you get the opportunity to participate in the rookie tournament. What excites you about the opportunity to showcase your talent there?
Yeah, it's fun. Obviously, last year I couldn't go, and this year, I mean, you know, it's just excitement. Obviously, I get to train for a lot more this summer and hopefully make it as far as I can. You know, it's going to be hard. You know, we love challenges, and that's why if everything was easy, we would be playing this game. So, yeah, I can't wait for the opportunity.
And in that environment, you get to see a little bit of game action. What do you hope will stand out about you as a player in that setting?
Yeah, kind of just my playmaking ability, and you know, I hope to score as many goals as I can. And yeah, it'll be fun. Obviously, playing here in Colorado, that's very exciting. And you know, getting to throw the Avs jersey on is really special. Obviously, playing in the game, Dev Camp last year, and getting to wear the jersey. So yeah, I'm excited for it.
And in looking at a weekend like this, what do you get out of development camp?
Yeah, I think just a lot of communication with coaches, staffs. You know, you feel comfortable coming here, and obviously year two, you know, you sort of recognize everyone coming back here, and you know, you get feedback from the coaching staff too, and it's early in the summer, so you have a lot of time to work on it when you go back. So
there's been so much chatter, you know, in recent weeks, months, whatever, about players that are going to be going from major junior to NCAA. And hey, you know, this is going to be a you know, go play major junior for a couple years, then in your draft year, go play Division I, and there's been a lot of conversation about that. But what I think is the most exciting thing for me with a lot of the changes that are being made, including 1 year too late for Cal Ritchie and the Avs, but including you know, younger players being eligible to go play straight in the American League. But where I'm going with this is what I like about the changes. You know, so Humphreys goes from Michigan State to Kitchener. Kids are going to be able to align their development path so much better and find the opportunity for them that makes the most sense, you know, in terms of, you know, like you're saying, playing time, usage, utilization. You know, I've got a good friend who, you know, played Division I and ended up having to, you know, bounce to a couple different schools to find that right fit because, you know, once you go to college, and you know, you were just so much more limited before in what you could do. And I think, you know, Humphreys could be a guy that, you know, who's going the other way versus what's being talked about a lot, major junior going to college.
Right.
This could be one of the examples of a player going in the opposite direction, but still in a way that is going to benefit them the most for their development, and it opens the door for him to be here in a couple months at main camp.
And we'll finally get to see him in a game setting because he can be in the rookie tournament, obviously, then in main camp. And I think that for all of these players, that's the reality, is their game is going to show better in actuality when you see it in a game setting. Because there are players that I think shine better in that setting and just really don't pop. But I will say, to Christian Humphreys' credit, you see the puck skill, as I described, there's speed bursts too to maneuver around people, and that's where you see some of the cockiness too, and some of the ways in which he'll maneuver around players. So it's not just settling pucks in traffic, it's his movement in traffic too, and settling pucks along the wall. I think that he's really in control of the puck on his stick, and so I'm excited to see then how offensively that translates to a game setting, because I think more games played through the Kitchener route than with Michigan, where, you know, he made that decision so early into the year. It was like 10 games and not very many points, if at all any, through those 10 games. The opportunity was limited. He gets to Kitchener. He's getting top 6 opportunity, playing center, playing wing, drafted as a center. And I think that versatility obviously is important because players like Christian probably will be utilized as a winger down the line. It's good for him then to just build that versatility into his game. And I'm excited to see some of that confidence in a game setting, because I don't think having that kind of confidence is a bad thing in a young player, and you just want to see them channel it into something productive.
Any other forwards from day 2 you want to specifically make sure you call out?
Cooper Gay, again,
yeah.
And, you know, it's just an extension of everything that I liked about him out of day 1. You know, in contrast to his puck skill, it maybe isn't as flashy as like a Christian Humphreys, but it's effective. And so there were drills where he needed to find a seam, and the way he did it just seemed so seamless. It came so easily to him, came so naturally to him. And so I think that in what I know of his pro debut, there is a lot of heart and soul in this player, but I think you shouldn't underestimate the puck skill of Cooper Gay as well. And then just continue to be impressed by his skating ability for his size. I think that's going to really serve him well in separating from his peers, just because he has that size advantage, but he can also skate. Obviously, if we're eyeing a future Avalanche role, that's a requirement, that's a necessity. I'm not penciling Cooper Gay into an NHL lineup tomorrow, but I think a full year with the Colorado Eagles, looking at his trajectory in college, the St. Thomas program, and earning the attention of the Avs, I think he's a quick study, a quick learner, and that is a player to keep an eye on.
I want to hear you say it on the pod. I want to hear you say it.
I'm really proud.
Oh, no. Megan, we walked out of locker room and said, I think he's a dark horse to get some games.
I do think he's a dark horse to get some games.
Yeah.
So just like for comparison, Chase Bradley is a player that I did not love in dev camp setting. Obviously, seeing in him games, I like what he does a lot more. I think that Cooper Gay has a similar profile to Chase Bradley, but is already a step above where Bradley was coming into dev camp. And so that's what excites me about Cooper Gay, is I think he's a step ahead of where Bradley was at, and Bradley got a game. So that's where I'm at with Cooper Gay.
Yeah, we're not talking making the roster out of camp or anything like that, but this is a guy to keep an eye on for sure.
Definitely. Well, first and foremost, how is your summer going? I saw the Eagles posted engagement news. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's going well. Kind of a quick summer. Got back like a month ago. Went to Greece. Came back with fiance, but it's been good. Got a lot done in the gym and on the ice, so pretty proud of where I'm at right now, and just ready to keep pushing the rest of the summer and come back into rookie camp ready to go.
I have to imagine it's a record year with an NHL contract on top of that. Can you take me back to the moment you signed for Colorado Avalanche?
Yeah, so we just lost in the Mason Cup Finals for University of St. Thomas. Had spring break the next day, so I was at the airport, got a call from my agent, and he just said, Colorado wants to talk to you, and I was like, okay, it's probably just like development camp, like probably go to that. And then got to Florida where I was going for spring break and got on the meeting, and my agent's like, no, like they want to sign you. And I was like, oh, wow. So took a meeting on Monday. I left for Florida on a Saturday, took a meeting on Monday, and I was back home on Tuesday, flew to meet the team in Ontario or the Eagles in Ontario on a Wednesday. So pretty quick turnaround there.
What do you think it was about the season that you had that led to?
I think it's just been not just this season, but past seasons. I've just kind of had an upward trajectory. I've gotten better every year, I think, and just produced a little bit more and just really owned my power forward role. And I think that's kind of what they saw, and I think they see a really high ceiling with me, which is good to hear. Just really excited to see what happens next year and everything like that. So.
The first from the program decided to what does that accomplishment mean to you?
I mean, it's always nice, just kind of laying the foundation for what that team wants to be. Got back home after our season and I talked to my university coach, and he was just like super proud of me, and he's like, this is kind of what the culture we're going to build here, is a championship program that develops and produces NHL caliber guys. So pretty crazy.
And you scored a goal in your pro debut. What do you think it was about your game that translated so quickly to the American League?
I think I've just always been like a bigger, stronger guy, and I think that's what really takes guys a longer time to adjust to. So I think just being physical enough to stay into the game and not get pushed around kind of helped a lot. And then obviously it's a way quicker game than college, but just being out there with my line mates, with Sendon and Dufour, they kind of just took me under their wing for that game and just helped me out a lot and gave me confidence. And first shift, I tracked down a D on a forecheck, picked the puck, and almost got an assist. So I kind of felt like I was able to play at that level already. So yeah.
And you have a taste for being around the Eagles during the playoffs. What did you take away from that experience?
Everyone's bought in. Everyone wants to be there. Everyone's working for a goal, which is awesome to see. I know sometimes you don't get that. Some guys want to go home or whatever it is, but
everyone was bought in, everyone knew the goal, and they just wanted to win for each other, not even themselves, which was pretty cool. Just obviously it's a hard league, hard championship to win, and it takes a lot. So.
And looking ahead at the rookie tournament, what is it about your game, in-game action, that you hope will pop?
Just my power forward, just puck protection, going to the net, tipping, knack for goal scoring. So maybe put a couple in the net and just being a good third, fourth line guy, and power play if they need it. So, yeah.
I want to give an update here on Taylor McCarr really quick, because I'm sure that's a name that a lot of folks are expecting us to talk a lot
Absolutely.
about. Sounds like he did undergo surgery this summer, upper body. So he's not here at Dev Camp. He's here, but he's not. That's why he's not on the ice. He did have a surgery. But when we talked to him yesterday, he did say he's expecting to be ready to go for main camp, which he can finally be at.
Yeah.
But just wanted to give that update that is why Taylor McCarr is not on the ice. He did have a surgery already this summer, so he can be ready to go for next season. He came in at the same time as Cooper Gay to the Eagles. So those were both names that I was really curious to see where they were going to stack up. Just wanted to make sure we gave that bit of update for people out there wondering what Taylor McCarr's up to.
Yeah, excited to keep him on the radar as well as another dark horse candidate. Because
Yes.
I have some, old prospects that are now a little less prospect-y, and like a Matt Steinberg and a Jason Poland, that I'm keeping an eye out also for depth roles starting out of camp with the Avs, with Logan O'Connor not available to them at the start. And Ivan, of course, I cannot forget him.
Yes. Prashepov, there's definitely, again, you and I talked about it throughout the season, like, for people being down on the Avs prospect pool, I think it's thin on like high impact guys that like could come in and be like, top. I think it is, full of a lot of meat and potato players that can give you NHL games. Like, I just don't buy, and maybe you disagree. I just don't buy into the fact that the Avs prospect pool is empty. Like, I think there's a lot of NHL upside in that talent pool. It's just not. Yeah, they're not top 5 picks. You know what I mean?
I think too, it's not obviously all through the draft, and the Avs have had so few draft picks though to turn that into something. But the fact that we're talking about such a late round pick in Taylor McCarr having any sort of NHL upside, once upon a time, many dev camps ago, that was not the conversation we were having. And so similarly though, the college free agent route, to have Malinsky just sign his extension and be an NHL regular after coming out of Cornell, I think it's exciting then to also see an Ivan, a dev camp invite, turns that into an AHL contract to an NHL contract. Like, they're finding ways to internally boost the prospect pipeline, the depth, that are a bit maybe unconventional from just drafting them and developing them that way. But I think there's a purpose behind it. In part necessity, they don't necessarily have a choice, but also having a player like Cooper Gay come out of college with a little bit of seasoning, I think helps the Avs. They're just closer to pro readiness than if not.
That's what we talked about with Deleche.
Who I like a lot.
What?
Who I like a lot.
Yep, and we're going to get to that for sure. But we talked about that on draft night. And I was saying, like, I given where the Avs prospect pool is at and where they are as an organization, I like them having some more mature prospects that are a little bit closer to, pro readiness. Again, just given where they're at. All right, well, let's turn the page to defensemen then, and let's just start right there. Francesco Deleche does take a kind of a nasty spill. Ends up needing a couple, gets stitched up. I don't know if it was actually stitches. It was under a bandage. Needed some work, but does come back onto the ice. We liked him yesterday. Thought he popped. Thoughts today?
So his offensive instinct really shined through today with respect to the nature of the drills that they were doing. And so that kind of shot selection drill with some of the obstacles, he might have been one of the best ones of the day in terms of his vision and his handling. He was finding pockets in the little fake goalie in the net on either side, and he was even starting to have a little fun with it by the end, some backhand shots on net, things like that, and just different unnecessary but fun maneuvers to spin. And I really was impressed by his vision and his finish then in this drill, because other young defenders struggled with it today. And I think that's why he was, leading all defensemen in points coming out of his freshman year at UMass. He really has terrific vision.
So, all right, let's pause here for a minute, because, when we talked to Chris McFarland after the draft, he said that this was a player that part of the reason they liked him was they felt he maybe was a step or two closer to being ready to make the leap to pro hockey. When we talked about him a couple nights ago, we were saying, you were talking about, like, this is probably a guy who's going to play through most of his eligibility in college, sophomore, junior, senior year. Do you still feel that way, or is this a guy that you think maybe one more, if he takes another big step this year, could we see him come out of UMass and join the Eagles as early as the end of this season?
What's interesting is, because there isn't a need necessarily, I love the idea of him soaking up as much of Greg Carvel as possible through UMass, because the opportunity will become more limited if he makes that pro leap, to the Eagles sooner rather than later. But obviously he'll be challenged with tougher matchups and more regular games, and that will model a pro schedule more closely than what college has to offer. So there's pros and cons to both. And so I may be in the middle way of it all. It's like maybe do two
more years.
Yes, 2 more years to the junior year.
This season, next season. Yeah.
And let him then assume a top pair role, top power play unit, full season, and just continue to elevate his own personal best coming off a really impressive freshman year. And so get the minutes, and then make that leap and compete for them in Loveland and have a better, clearer path to winning those.
Yeah. And again, if there's an exceptional step that is taken this year, okay, then you have a different conversation. But
totally.
I'm honestly, again, I haven't been as dialed in onto the on-ice sessions the last couple of days as you have, but from what I have watched from him, I actually really like that, what you just kind of mapped out there. Go get your sophomore season under your belt, and then go into your junior year as a leader, top pairing guy, and then go have that, really solid year where you're kind of in a different role, and then take the step to the pro game. Let's talk about Sage Weinstein. I'm going to say all of them. This is another player that has popped, not just, whoa, there was a big fly that flew right there, and I thought it was just out of my, periffs. I thought it was a puck. No. This is not the first time we've gotten a look at Sage. I talked yesterday about when you're seeing guys that come back, you want to see them pop and start to separate. Where are you at with Sage?
I still think this is an exciting prospect, and so it was Tori Pittner and Sage Weinstein that were on the ice last today doing a little extra work with Toby Peterson and Tim Branham, and I think that's by design. These weekends are for this type of player at this stage in his development. I thought it was interesting that they gave him a contract with another year of juniors eligibility under his belt, and he didn't even get to compete in the rookie tournament last year, so we didn't see him in that game setting. Obviously, Avs have familiarity with his junior career thus far, and I think that's why they see the upside in this player, because going back 2 dev camps ago, I did get to see him in the rookie tournament, and I really like this player, and I think he's an intriguing defenseman. I think today wasn't his day, personally, and you could see the frustration a little bit in that shot selection drill, but I think his vision is a lot better than today teased just everything else about his body of work through this point. But where I'm at with Sage is, if we're looking at him making that pro leap, he's competing with a pretty stacked Eagles back end, with a Sean Behrens now likely in that equation, though I'm sure Behrens will try to fight for a spot out of camp. Just looking at the opportunity realistically,
that just with the Abs?
Yes, yeah. That just makes then the complexion of the D-core in Loveland incredibly competitive. And I'm looking at a player like once upon a time, Brian Yoon, who was a player that was one of those college free agents that they got from Colorado College. It was hard for him to crack the Eagles lineup coming out of the East Coast League. It took Jack O'Shawn getting injured for him to even really get a look. And I think that Brian Yoon and Sage Weinstein have like a similar profile in what they are. And it's a valuable player, but there's other players represented like him in the Eagles D-core, and Jack O'Shawn being one of them, who they just re-signed. And so the road ahead for him, I think, is a little bit challenging. But I don't want to dismiss what I have seen before, the last couple of days. I think that he has good vision. I think that he moves the puck extremely well. And I think in a game setting, too, the instinct kicks in, and it's a lot more impressive than anything you can really gather from drills. So that'll be the biggest test for me. I'll be ready to talk about Sage Weinstein way more after the rookie tournament, because back Jeremy Hansel days, that was another player, though, of the defensemen. Also, Sam Malinsky was in that tournament. So, there are a lot of guys to watch in that rookie tournament, but he was one that I liked for a reason. So I'll keep an eye on him.
I want to talk about Sean Behrens. I know we did talk about him yesterday. We heard from him on the pod yesterday as well. But, he's now called it out a few times when we've talked to him. It was part of what I think made the injury such a bummer last year. He had a great camp last season, a great main camp. And, he was down to the last handful of cuts, if you will. And so I think it's a good call out on this is a player that I'll say is a dark horse to make the team out of camp. Dark horse. I think it's going to be a tough path, but I think he's going to make that push. I guess just after missing the entire season, and, he was even telling us today, still, working his way back, still getting back there. But knowing, what he's talked about and knowing what we've seen on the ice, where are you at with Sean Behrens?
I think it goes back to what I just talked about with Sage and the competitive path to not just like an Eagles back end, but in Sean's case, the Colorado Avalanche. Players like a Sam Malinsky are his direct competition, and Sean Behrens is a left-handed defenseman, so that left side, that'll kind of be then the question to be answered if they are trying to round out that bottom pair with a player like Sean, or do they feel like they have enough of that style of defenseman represented in the D-core currently because of Malinsky, and so it might be a bit redundant. And that's just the challenge ahead for Behrens then, to separate himself as a more multi-dimensional defenseman, because I think an aspect of his game that he has tried to improve has been the defensive side of his game and his physicality. Like, he's an undersized defenseman, so it's
listed
not
at 5'10".
Yeah, it's not necessarily going to be he's imposing the physicality, but he has to wear it. And so he's had some injury history. Like, this last year was a total freak injury, so it's not like this recurring thing. He's just kind of had a bad string of luck when it comes to injuries that I think would give coaches a little bit of pause to immediately plug him in and trust him. So that's Sean's task in the year ahead, is to demonstrate that there is no reason to worry about this player, his availability going into the next year. The goal should be play a full and healthy season, whether that be with the Colorado Eagles or not. That should be the main goal, and then establish himself as a strong two-way defender, because he was starting to, rack up PK minutes at DU in addition to being the top guy on the power play. And so that's what you want to see Sean be, is a little bit of everything. And I think the last couple of days, even though he's not been at 100%, that is what I've seen. Like, he continues to have such a well-rounded foundation that I think he has so much to build. He just needs to then let the experience shine through and totally separate from everybody else.
I mean, this is a former second-round pick. Like, Hobie Baker finalist at one point. Like, I do think he's undersized. No doubt about it. He's 5'10", listed at 175. But, like, not that long ago, this was a highly, highly touted prospect.
Going back to World Juniors, when they won bronze, he was on a bottom pair role in terms of utilization, and by the end of that tournament for Team USA, he was playing with Luke Hughes for a reason. He was the stabilizing factor of that top pair. and that is very purposeful with reason. It's a reflection of what Sean Behrens is and how he helped to balance out Luke Hughes. And so I want to give Behrens his flowers because that's a best on best, among his age group. And he was the defensive representation on that pair. So I think that there's so much in Sean Behrens' ceiling that hasn't been fully realized. And it's a bummer that this last year, that was the step in the direction he wanted. He just has to take it a year later.
Yeah. Obligatory, I'm going to ask you about goalies, but there's not a whole lot to take out of this. With what they're doing this week, goalies are only out there about half the time, and there's only one goalie right now that isn't just a straight camp invite. Was really, really hoping we would be able to see Ilya Nabokov here this week. But as Evan Ralla has reported, ran into some visa issues, things like that. Isaac Posh is right now, at least with the way that the depth chart is set up, would be backing up Trent Miner in the American Hockey League. Again, there is not a lot they're doing with goalies this week. Do you have any notes on goalies?
I don't really have any notes on goalies, just that I wanted to see more of Isaac Posh because I remember overhearing him. This is around the time that Taylor McCarr was joining the Eagles as well, and I remember hearing him talking with some of the other goalies about how he landed in Colorado. Like, there were other teams that had interest in him, and he chose Colorado because it sounded like they had the most interest among the teams. And I think that the timing wasn't quite right. He was back in the East Coast because between Mandalese, Trent Miner, and Adam Scheel, they just kind of had the goaltending network covered this last year. So there's just opportunity for him ahead. I don't really have anything of note about the dev camp specifically because this is not an environment for goalies.
No.
And so I'm so protective of them. They're doing great. They're doing amazing. Obviously, though, in the rookie tournament, this will be huge for Isaac Posh then to really see what we've got in him.
Had a great last year at St. Cloud State.
Absolutely. And so I think that's why, there was interest in other teams. He chose Colorado and Colorado chose him. So I think it's an interesting add then to the goalie pipeline. And before we leave the defensemen, there were two additional, I won't spend much time, but two additional standouts. And they're guys that should stand out. It's Connor Kelly and Hank Kempf. Hank Kempf is that Cornell defenseman that they got, and then Connor Kelly from Providence.
Yeah.
And both players that made their Eagles debut this last year. And, Connor Kelly was having so much fun with that shot selection drill today. He had hands that I didn't quite see, and he was having a lot of fun with it. And Hank Kempf snuck up on me because when I watched him in action with the Eagles, I just kind of build him as this stay-at-home defenseman type. But obviously, he gets a point in his first pro game and then his first playoff game with the Eagles, and so he has more of an offensive instinct and puck skill than I gave him credit for, and they stood out today in a positive way, both of those players. So just two great college free agent, kind of. Hank Kempf was his signing rights were a part of a trade, but you get the idea. Just dipping into that college pool that's just a bit unconventional. Really like the addition of these two because I know when Hank Kempf was brought on, people were kind of directly comparing him to Sam Malinsky. They're very different defensemen just from the same program. And so Hank Kempf, his toolkit is going to be different from Malinsky's, but I think people were too quick to write him off, maybe because his puck skill isn't to where Malinsky's is, or his skating isn't to where Malinsky's is the bigger criticism. But he's a bigger guy. So I think his profile is just totally different.
Yeah. It's again, like I said, their pipeline is definitely not stocked with high-end talent that you're expecting to come in and grow into first-line players and things like that. But I really do, Megan. I think there is more to be excited about with the Avs pipeline in terms of. I think you got pro players in your prospect pool here,
easily.
And it's how many of them can you develop to take that next step? And again, that's what I like about a lot of your notes here, is I remember years and decades and eras past, we'd come to these development camps and it's okay. Can I talk myself into this guy becoming a second line player? And it's like, no, we're out here saying, can the Avs turn one or two of these guys into NHL players? And I think you're going to have some. I think you're going to have some nice looks out here from some of these players.
for a lot of these players, you have to turn them into American League players first.
Yep.
And that was Logan O'Connor's path to becoming an NHL regular with a really great extension under his belt. And it all started with an impressive Dev Camp showing, you know. Dev Camp invite turns that into an American League contract, to an NHL contract now. He's extended with the Avs for a good while. It's building blocks along the way. And so we're not supposed to necessarily know if they're going to be NHL players tomorrow. We need to see them become AHL players first, and that's just the first step. But it's about them taking it. You know, year after year, a couple of these guys we've seen now a few times. So that's where I want to see Sage really pop off then in that rookie tournament coming up.
All right, well, let's wind it down here.
Let's wind it down.
Let's wind it down. You know, and I was looking up to see how old he was and stuff like that. I don't know if he would actually be here. Bardakov would have been a fun player to see out at this camp.
I wanted to see him, but, you know, they're so high on him that they're probably like, you don't need to be here. Yeah. He's a little bit older, but so is Riley Connors, who is here as a camp invite, obviously.
Yeah.
But
24, Zakhar Bardakov, who is part of the Curtis McDermott deal that looked like a throw-in and is suddenly turning some heads with a really strong year in the KHL.
No, I think
season.
that's what's interesting is, you know, all those guys I just mentioned, Matt Steinberg, Jason Pullen, maybe an Ivan, and then there's a Cooper Gay somewhere in that list. Bardakov's at the top of it. That's the guy that is vying for a depth role coming out of camp. And so he's the guy to beat in a lot of ways.
Yeah. 17 goals, 35 points in 53 KHL games, and did serve as an alternate captain for SKA St. Petersburg. All right, let's turn our attention to some NHL names here and what hasn't happened so far in the last 24 plus hours. You know, Megan, we talked on the pod yesterday how we didn't shoot the pod here because we're like, well, no, let's go home. Let's give ourselves some extra time.
For the news to break.
I know some news is going to come through, so let's wait. Well, we end up going through the entire live show. Nothing happens. We go through our entire evenings, you and I, as we were both signing off for the day. We're like, all right, well, I'll probably see you in like an hour. Nothing happened. The Avs have not really made a splash anywhere. They got some internal internal business taken care of yesterday with the Parker Kelly stuff. But here we are, 1 p.m., the day after free agency opens. Really no big free agent names. Really no big trades have come through for the Avs. Nikolai Ehlers is still out there. I just don't, I don't know. I don't even know what to think at this point about what they're going to do.
So you know what I wanted to entertain for a second was, okay, if we're to entertain the possibility of Nikolai Ehlers, it obviously should come at the expense of Marty Netches. Then in the lineup, it would become a bit redundant to have both of those players in. How could you afford it? And the reason I can be talked into this would be, I don't think there was any truth to Marty Netches being unhappy in Colorado. But I do think there is truth to the possibility that contract negotiations for his next deal have certainly begun. And if the Avs catch any whiff of the fact that Netches, the money that he is after, and his intensity around, being committed to that number is a number that they just will never reach, then it might signal the possibility of, okay, well then we need to find a top six option. Maybe whatever a Nikolai Ehlers would want to be in Colorado makes sense for a few years if it's just not going to work contract-wise with Marty Netches. And I can be talked into that because Marty Netches, he just came off a career-high season in points. He can absolutely command a good amount of money. And honestly, even just seeing the market around players like that, even as recently as a Mikko Rantanen, though, a bit elevated in what he is, his body of work a bit more proven, Marty Netches can ask for more money. And if he's really intent on that next contract being a bit too rich for Colorado's liking, then I would entertain the possibility of that being a return. A Nikolai Ehlers, a Marty Netches with another year left in his contract. That might hold appeal then for a trade partner down the line, and that might be the incentive then for Colorado to fill those shoes with a player like Ehlers.
Well, and would that not line up with what we've heard about, the Avs are working on something big, they got some up their sleeve, that would line up with, you sign Nikolai Ehlers, then you trade Marty Netches, and that maybe even leads to another cascading, domino effect of, and I'm going to go a little bit rogue here on this, but like, for instance, okay, we signed Nikolai Ehlers. We trade Marty Netchus for a defenseman, which now means we're going to turn around and flip Josh Manson, Sam Girard, or whatever. So that would, what you're talking about would track with something, along the more national reports that have been out there of, oh, there's something big cooking here.
That would be big.
That would be big.
And I think just whatever return a Marty Netchus could fetch would be a difference maker in Colorado's
100%.
lineup. So you're looking at, all right, now there's an addition of Nikolai Ehlers and whatever the return for a Marty Netchus would be. And so those are two big storylines that absolutely alter the shape of a lineup, and it would be worthy of big news.
Let me ask you a question that I was asked earlier today. Would you rather have, and hold, let me actually pull, do you know Josh Manson's cap hit off the top of your head?
I thought it was 4.5.
4.5. Would you rather have one more year of Josh Manson or 1 year of Brent Burns at $3 million? And then you flip Josh Manson. No? Why not?
I think that Brent Burns is running out of a little bit of steam, and I think that would be third pair role. I couldn't expect him to play above that.
Interesting.
I still think that Josh Manson has second pair upside.
Yeah, I do too.
For a few more years too. It's his availability that's been a little bit questionable.
I said yes for that exact reason.
I am not crazy. 40-year-old Brent Burns, I'm not crazy about that.
For 1
flip.
year. For 1 year.
I know, but $3 million for 40-year-old Brent Burns is scaring me a little bit. I really like Brent Burns. Like, separate from this trade, you can talk me into being interested in Brent Burns.
See, I like Brent Burns as a Ryan Lindgren replacement in that 2 to 2.5 range.
I'm scared.
All right.
About his ability to shut down those matchups over an 82-game season. This isn't Brent Burns slander.
No. I like him in either. I haven't heard this anywhere that the Avs are in on Brent Burns or anything like that, but that's just, again, of the few names that even made it to market, that is a name that's out there. And like I said, that question was posed to me today of Brent Burns at a lesser dollar amount over Josh Manson. But I think you and I, even off air yesterday, talked about the possibility of Brent Burns on the bottom pairing.
That's where I would comfortably have him. I think it would be a more sure thing than a player like a Calvin DeHaan. Not to needlessly pick on him. It's just I think they have taken a chance on how they create that bottom pair this last season. And I think it needs to be a little bit more of a sure thing just for the comfort level of coaches. And I think
Megan, he's 6'5", and I keep being told by everyone this summer that's all that matters for defense.
It certainly does matter to have some physicality and size represented in the D-core. So, I don't hate that, but it's not the only thing that matters, too. And getting up and down the ice, serviceable defensemen matter, too.
Cody Glass gets a 2-year extension in New Jersey. I don't know. I again, just of the names that are still out there, the Avs are going to need a defenseman, especially if they, start wheeling and dealing. I think Brent Burns is an intriguing name in the same way that I found Ryan Lindgren to be an intriguing name to bring back, if the dollars and cents make sense. I hate doing that.
No, I agree, and they still need to figure out. I don't even want to limit it to just the bottom pair, however they want the second, third pair to be made up. They need to decide. It's not a full picture just yet. I'm not comfortable running it back with the way it looks right now.
I agree. Yeah, you need, if nothing else, you need a third pair guy. If nothing else, you need a third pair guy. And then you'd like some insurance for if/when Josh Manson, Sam Girard miss time. And then, you got to figure out what you're doing up front, whether that's Nikolai Ehlers, whether it's flipping Marty Netchus. You got to get that dialed in here. We are all still kind of just in wait and see mode, and even the Avs have told everyone for today, maybe Chris McFarland, maybe we'll talk, later today, which tells me that they're up to something.
Oh, yeah, no, I think they have been the last 48 hours, 48 hours, for sure. And the only thing I can think, too, is obviously I want the Avs to be in on what they should be in on, but I also believe things don't work out for a reason sometimes, and I'm looking ahead to whoever this year's version of an Evan Rodriguez or Tomas Tatar. I know those didn't quite work out the way people had hoped, but it was low risk with the possibility of high reward. And that might be to the direction that the Avs head as we get deeper and deeper into free agency and summer. Because there haven't been so many names in this free agent market that I'm like, they need this guy. That is what will complete this team.
All right, last thought here. Did you, and I guess it's a start to the question, did you see the video of Mitch Marner putting on his jersey yesterday? When I talk about the Vegas Golden Knights being rebuild proof, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Full drum line, showgirls, got the whole Vegas front office there, sitting for him, celebrating. The official post was actually welcoming his entire family, not just Mitch Marner. Megan, I think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to be a problem for the NHL for a long, long time. I just don't think this is an organization that's going to go through the regular ebbs and flows of rebuilding and things like that. They got aggressive ownership, aggressive management, and players want to be there. I just didn't know if you had any thoughts on Mitch Marner landing finally in Vegas.
Yeah, it kind of felt inevitable as things dragged on with Marner and the Leafs. It was time. I know that a lot of people are frustrated that it's Vegas, and I'm frustrated that he'll now be playing out west. But I think it needed to happen, and I go back to when Vegas first popped on the scene, and there were murmurs of them not treating their players super great, the goalies in particular. And I think they've really rehabilitated that image, and I think the players' desire to be there reinforces that too. I'm not even just speculating. It is clear to me that players want to be there, and I think it's everything about the culture that they've created. It is a winning culture. You can tell that there is a level of buy-in and their commitment to rounding out their depth and contributions from everybody. That I think that is what makes them such a powerhouse, and a little bit frustrating as an outside observer. But it's also kind of a model to look to, not the LTIR cap circumvention stuff, but the other stuff. All right, I really appreciate aggressive management, because I'm looking at just even the switch up of Utah ever since obviously the change of management, leaving Arizona, and was bummed about that when it happened. But I do think that you can see and feel the difference of good, aggressive management.
Who cares? And the management there, because the support they're getting.
1,000%. And so Vegas, it just feels like they've had it, and they needed to work out some kinks in the beginning, no doubt. But I think they've really found a good rhythm for what they want to be as an organization, and it continues to draw top talent.
I remember when Mark Stone got to town, and they have the drum line meeting him at the airport. You see that arrival yesterday for Mitch Marner, and I'm just sitting there yeah, if I was a player, I'd want to play there.
Yeah, they just win out on player sweepstakes, right? Like Tomas Hertl and now obviously Mitch Marner coming there. Once upon a time, Jack Eichel. It's just like a destination for players that need a new home and have a lot of talent to offer.
Yeah, well, so that's going to do it for right now. I'm going to give the same caveat that we gave yesterday, that we may be back in an emergency pod capacity later. We'll see if the Avs ever actually pull off this big move that they've got up their sleeve. We'll be back to talk about it. No Megan tomorrow at Dev Camp. It'll be me and Mark bringing you guys all the sights and sounds here from Family Sports as the Avs wrap up their development camp, and then we head into 2 months, Megan, of the real off season here. So a couple more days this week here at the rink, but she's Megan, I'm Jesse. Got Mark behind the proverbial glass today. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll be back with more content tomorrow. See you later.
Bye.